Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make a Mississippi mud cake. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, it's Sam here, and this one is for all you Chocoholics out there. This is a rich, fudgy, decadent cake with a chocolate icing, a chocolate base, and lots of marshmallows. Let's go ahead and get started by preheating our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, one of the beautiful things about this cake recipe is it's mostly made on the stove top, so no mixer required. You're going to want to grab a medium-sized saucepan. Let's head over to our stove. We're going to be starting with 1 cup of unsalted butter. I'm just going to drop this in my saucepan, and I like to cut it up into a few pieces. It just helps it melt a little bit faster. We'll add 1 cup of water and a 1/3 cup of natural cocoa powder. Now turn your stovetop heat to medium, and we're going to stir all of these ingredients together until that butter is nice and melted. Just make sure you stir things occasionally, that way nothing starts to burn. Now once your butter is nice and melted, we're going to bump that heat up to medium or medium high, and we're going to continue to cook this, stirring occasionally until it comes to a boil. All right, now once this is nice and boiling, you'll want to take it off the heat, careful. We're going to let this cool for about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, while that's cooling, we can go ahead and prepare our dry ingredients. You're going to need a large bowl for your flour, and this is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll add 1.5 cups of granulated sugar and a 1/2 cup of firmly packed light brown sugar. You'll also need 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and if you really want to bump up that chocolate flavor, you can also add a 1/2 teaspoon of instant coffee. We'll whisk these together until everything is nicely combined. I'm just going to break up that brown sugar a little bit. Maybe get a bigger whisk. Now I like to make a well in the center of the dry ingredients. And here is where I'm going to combine 1/2 cup of sour cream. Sour cream really helps make this a nice, moist, and fudgy cake. We'll add 2 large eggs and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now I'm just going to use a fork to whisk these ingredients together inside that well so they're nicely combined. You could do this in a separate bowl, but I like to save myself a dish. So once those wet ingredients are nicely combined, I like to switch over to a spatula, and we will stir everything together until this is a pretty nice cohesive batter. It'll be a little bit thick, that's totally fine. It'll thin out when we add our chocolate mixture. Once you have everything nicely combined in the bowl, you'll want to grab your chocolate mixture. Now, so long as it has cooled for at least 15 minutes, we can pour this into our thick batter in the bowl. I want to make sure I don't leave any of that chocolate mixture behind. Now stir this carefully because that chocolate mixture might still be a little bit hot, and you want to stir until everything is smooth and well combined. A bigger bowl definitely would have made things a little bit easier for me right now. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm trying really hard not to splash chocolate all over the place. So once the batter is mostly combined, I like to switch back to a whisk just to make sure everything is really nicely combined and there are no hidden lumps in there. And if you're worried that the batter is too thin, it is supposed to look like this. We'll be baking this cake in a jelly roll pan, which is a 10 by 15 inch baking pan. Now I'm just going to lightly spray this with a little bit of baking spray. If you don't have baking spray, you can lightly grease and flour the pan instead. I just like to go over it quickly with a paper towel, that way the spray is nice and even. Now pour your batter into the baking pan. Beautiful. I'm just gonna scrape out all of that chocolate. I don't want to leave any behind. If this looks awkward, it's because it's not actually that easy to pour batter away from yourself. Now let's take this over to our 350 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven, where it's going to need to bake for about 20 to 25 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean or with a few moist crumbs. So while the cake is baking, we're going to prepare our frosting. This is a really simple icing that can be prepared either on the stovetop or in the microwave. Today I'm going to be doing it in the microwave, so you need a large heat-proof bowl. Now I'm going to be adding a 1/2 cup of milk and 11 tablespoons of butter. Typically, I like to use unsalted butter and add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, but today all I have left is salted butter, so I'm just using salted butter and not adding any salt. Now this butter is a little bit soft, but yours doesn't need to be. Mine's just been sitting under the hot filming lights, so it's a little bit melty, but that's okay. I'm going to break it up into a couple pieces. And I recommend you do the same. It just helps everything melt together a little bit more evenly. Now we'll take this over to the microwave and microwave in 30-second increments until the butter is completely melted and the mixture should be nice and warm. Now we're going to sift in 1/2 cup of cocoa powder. And I like to sift this just because the sifter catches any lumps that might be in the cocoa powder and helps keep this icing nice and smooth. See those lumps? We don't want them in our frosting, so I'm just gonna break them up. And then whisk your cocoa powder into the butter mixture. Stir in a teaspoon of vanilla extract. We're going to be adding 5 cups of powdered sugar. Now, as with the cocoa powder, I like to sift this into the mixture. If you don't mind a few lumps, you can skip this step. So I like to add the powdered sugar gradually, about 1/2 cup to a cup at a time, because if it starts to get too thick, I just stop adding sugar at that point. I'll show you what it's supposed to look like. So I used all 5 cups and this is looking just about perfect. So as you can see, when I lift the whisk out of the frosting, that little drizzle, that ribbon that falls back, it holds its shape for a couple seconds before it dissolves back into the rest of the frosting. The icing will start to harden pretty quickly, but you want to be able to pour it over your cake while the cake is still warm. So you want to try to time everything so the frosting is ready just about when the cake's coming out of the oven. Now, my cake is finishing right now, so let's take a look at it. So you want to use a toothpick to check if your cake is done. So toothpick inserted in the center is coming out with a few moist crumbs. So this looks perfect, so we can go ahead and add one of the most important ingredients of a Mississippi mud cake, and that is the marshmallows. You're going to need a 10-ounce bag of mini marshmallows. This is about 5 cups. And while the cake is still warm, within a couple minutes of it coming out of the oven, we're going to scatter these marshmallows evenly over top. Very gently, use your hands to lightly, very lightly, you don't want to smash the cake, press the marshmallows into the surface of the cake. This just helps encourage them to stick. Again, we're being very light here, we're not squishing the cake. Now grab your icing. If the top has started to solidify a little bit, you'll want to whisk it again real quickly. And drizzle this as evenly as you can over your cake. We're losing some on the sides. You might want to put some wax paper down underneath your pan. In a perfect world where I actually had patience, I would wait for this icing to cool for at least an hour. But I'm hungry and I'm a chocoholic, so I'm going to cut in right now. It's just going to be a little extra fudgy. Things are still a little bit melty. That's okay with me. That is how you make a really good Mississippi mud cake. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh man. So good.